It is now 1 o'clock. We will begin with the important work at the Senate Transportation Committee. Currently not present are a number of members of this committee. I'd like to go around, if we can, and get the opinion of the committee members of who will be the next member to arrive. So start with. We'll start with Chairman Beach. I'll recognize you on 2. Who will be the next member to arrive?
Majority Leader Gooch.
Okay. Burns.
Leader Anvatarte.
Okay. Chairman Moore.
Senator Anvatarte.
Ooh. Mallow.
Senator Frank
Luke.
Hey, neither do we.
All right. Beach, you got any action on this? Is this considered a sport?
The reason I feel good about Majority Leader Gooch is because he's also Chairman Emeritus Transportation.
Indeed, he does love the topic. All right, well, this is the fun time of year. We got a lot of House members here. Got a lot of lobbyists in the room today. Interesting, okay. We do have 5 bills on our agenda, so we'll go ahead and get started. Chairman Beach, do we have a substitute for yours?
Yes.
Relative to what we talked about?
You want me to come up here?
I would love for you, Mr. Chairman, to go present to the committee. I believe you've already got a question. Senator Mallow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the senator's substitute, is that going to be a betting or gambling bill? We're going to do that in transportation?
Can you say that again? Sorry,
I was trying to see if it was going to be a betting or gambling bill. We were gonna I know it's a gambling bill now.
Mr. Leader, welcome. We all took bets on who would arrive next, non-monetary bets. And I want you to know, you're to my left where you belong. I want you to know, know that Chairman Beach had faith in you arriving next, but I would like to hear your vote on who's not here. Now, your options are the following: Clint Dixon, Josh McLaurin, Jason Anvatarte, Frank Ginn, Sean Still. And who will be the next one to come in?
Oh, it's got to be. I got to be careful when I say it. Said the. I think it'll be Frank Ginn.
Okay. All right.
So do we win money?
Chairman Beach, I believe, may be doing some off-record bookie deals if you want to get with him offline, but not officially.
You know that. I'm about gambling. We'll gamble. Yeah. We'll eventually get it here.
All right, Mr. Chairman, tell us about your study committee.
All right, I've got SR 283, LC 394742S. Basically, this is looking at height restrictions. We're one of 3 states that does not regulate height restrictions around its surrounding airports. As you know, we've got 105 general aviation airports around the state, and I would argue that they are very vital to economic development. I know the one in my area in Ball Ground, it's like number 6 now in the state in volume. It's really grown. They've extended the runway, they've widened the runway, they've added hangar space, and it's really grown, and it's part of our economic development. It's a tool in our toolbox from economic development standpoint to have that airport and be able to have hangar space and what we've done with it. So we're just worried about tall structures at the end of a runway or around a runway that could be
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, if you don't mind. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Frank Ginn.
Hey!
You and who else had? Yeah, you, yeah.
Good job, Frank. I get you some money?
Not yet. Not officially. Not officially. All right.
So
sorry.
anyway, just to wrap up, Mr. Chairman, we're just concerned about tall structures at the end of runways and critical approach and departure zones that would compromise aircraft operations and public safety. And also, real quickly, the President of the Senate will appoint 4 members. The State Transportation Chairman will be on the committee. The Commissioner of Transportation will have a designee or himself. The President of GMA or a designee, and the President of the ACCG and his or her designee. And then we'll have 5 meetings, and we'll just really kind of look at this subject and come back with a report.
So I'm wondering, do you know generally, that you mentioned we're one of 3 states, so obviously we would not be breaking new ground here. Why don't we just look at what the bulk of the other states around us are doing and follow suit if we think that's best? Or do you think there's other issues that we need to?
Well, we need to really
Dive
look at,
into.
I really believe this. I can tell you, I'm an economic development guy, and I can tell you these airports are critical to economic development. And I think we can look at a lot of things that can help spur economic development around these general aviation airports.
Got a question from Leader Gooch.
Yeah, I think I can help answer your question. So this is important, and I support the study committee, but I think what you're going to find, no pun intended, but when you do a deep dive into this subject, you're going to get into private property rights. You're going to be challenged with inverse condemnation because you're going to put restrictions on private property. People's development rights will be stricken, so you'll end up having to pay for a lot of that through courts and lawsuits. And so I think it is important we take a look at it, but we need to make sure we have a balanced approach to the discussion and bring homeowners and developers all back into it as well. So, but I do support the study committee on this.
Yeah.
Chairman Moore, recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are any of our state's aircraft going to be using this study?
I would not think so.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee? Did anybody sign up on this one? All right. We have Edward Lindsay is signed up to testify. So welcome to Senator McLaurin. We did have a running tally as to kind of who people believe would be the next one to arrive. And no one voted for you.
No one.
So do with that information what you will.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Edward Lindsay, for the record. I'm here representing the Georgia Airport Association. And to Chairman Burns, Davidson College is up 56-55 against Richmond in the Atlantic 10 at the present moment. I'm here representing the Georgia Airport Association, and we thank Chairman Beach for having this study committee. While there are 47 states that have passed something, Mr. Chairman, there's at least 42 different versions.
Okay.
And that's part of the problem. And we have done it. I represent the Georgia Airport Association. We represent, I think, 72 of the 105 airports in the state, both general aviation and commercial, are members of the Georgia Airport Association. We have done an exhaustive study on this. And we will be lending our expertise in terms of that and bringing in the folks who did the study to sort of help the study committee along. We are, by and large, owned by various local governments. And we certainly need a buy-in from those local governments in terms of what is the best path forward for the state of Georgia to follow regarding how other states have done it and seeing what has worked well and what hasn't worked well. The fact of the matter is, the state of Georgia, in addition to local governments, invest a lot of money into these airports, and we certainly want the airplanes to be able to take off and land.
Have you seen the locals pass any local regs around height restriction?
It's not too much, quite frankly, and so that has led to a lot of problems when it comes to trying to, quite frankly, make sure that the runways are able to use to the extent that you guys invest in them. And
So in the scenario that Leader Gooch talked about, where you would have basically these condemnations, as these other states have done that, has that typically been paid by the state or the locals?
Usually it's paid by the locals, and quite frankly, usually the laws will come up with some method in which the state will develop some minimum standards through the Georgia, through its Department of Transportation, and then the local governments can decide whether or not to enact something different. That's usually been the method that's worked best. But what we're looking for is a total buy-in from the various entities that, quite frankly, own our airports, so that we can come back to you next year with a kumbaya bill in which we handle the issues for the local governments. We also handle the issues raised by Leader Gooch regarding private property rights. We're very sensitive to that as well.
Great. Any other questions from the committee?
One last thing I want to add is that we are prepared to offer airports as locations. I think it'll be to help folks to see what exactly is going on at the various airports. So these 5 locations that you're talking about, we're more than happy to utilize our members to provide locations for the study committee to come, in addition to assisting with the studies that we've already done. The bill does not include the president of the Georgia Airport Association, regardless of whether you put him on or her on or not. We'll be there helping each session. But if in the committee's infinite wisdom you want to add the Georgia Airport Association's president or his designee, we'd appreciate that. But we'll leave that up to your discretion. We're just very happy to have the bill.
Recognize Leader Gooch for question.
Just wanted to throw some more onto this discussion. A good example is City of Blairsville's airport. Their thresholds got reduced as a result of the approaches. Trees are growing more every year, and you eventually have all these obstructions. And the FAA comes in with new rules and more restrictions, and they lower the thresholds. Now we can't land big jets up there. We were landing some really nice sized planes, and they would buy fuel. You can get a Falcon in there and buy $5,000 worth of fuel. Now that doesn't happen any longer. So the airports are not utilized like they could be because of this situation. So I think we need to do a good study on it.
That is an excellent example, Mr. Chairman. FAA will come in after the fact and tell, well, you can't utilize this airport to the extent that, quite frankly, oftentimes you guys have paid for it to be utilized. They only come in after the fact. What we're trying to do is deal with issues before the fact, so that when you guys make an investment into our airports, that money gets to be utilized fully.
Senator Ginn, is that you with your light on over there? Recognize Senator Ginn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Off the top of your head, I know it seems like it's like a 1 to 1,200 feet. I'm not sure what the FAA rule is on clearance on airports, but it's something really remarkable. On the elevation. I don't know if somebody has that off the top of their head or what the rule currently is, but it's significant distance. I didn't know if you had that, Mr. Lindsay.
Senator Ginn, when I took this job, I was told there'd be no math.
Lawyers do real good at math, let me promise you.
No, I do not, but I will be, in all seriousness, I'll be happy to get that to you, because I do have folks who do have that information, and that's be part of the testimony that this study committee will hear, is exactly how that works.
Thank you.
I will be in just a second. I got a question from Senator McLaurin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lindsay, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Is there
To
any
my
issue?
senator.
Always good to see you. Is there any issue with the Atlanta airport that is driving any of this, or
No.
is it mostly other?
No, this
okay.
is primarily general aviation airports.
Okay.
Like I said, out of the 72 airports that the Georgia Airport Association has as members, I believe 64 or 65 are general aviation airports, and it's usually the general aviation airports that have the difficulty, not the commercial airports.
Just got to check my box for my district. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Beach, you brought this as a committee sub, I believe, because this started as a joint study committee.
Yes,
Did
this
not
was going to be a
cross over.
joint study committee, and I missed crossover, so we're just going to do a Senate study committee.
Great. So the bill summary, which references, okay, we're removing 4 House members. That's the reason why
Yeah.
we're doing that, not because you believe that the House members would not have anything to contribute. You would otherwise welcome their contribution. I said. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I will recognize Leader Gooch.
I would encourage the House to pass a similar resolution, and we could still do a concurrent study.
That's a good idea.
If you think it's necessary. But I would make a motion to pass SR 283, that's LC number 394742S.
I've got a motion to pass by substitute, and we have a second from, was that Senator again? Motion from Leader Gooch. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Beach. Thank you, Ed. Thank you. All right, next up, I saw him walk in the room. We have Representative McCollum with House Bill 575.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing my bill. We got Josh with me from DOT as well. HB 575 LC 394628. Essentially, this is a department bill. Essentially, this bill gives the department more leeway.
Can you say that LC number again?
Excuse me, LC 394628.
That is not
Is
the
that the wrong
LC
one
that
I
we
got?
have. So we have 394708. Is there a sub?
Well, we didn't say it.
She had to do a technical amendment.
Couldn't have been much change.
No, that was removed. She just said where it said reserved, she had to
Okay.
strike it. So that may be the difference.
Yeah, that's the one that passed out of House Committee. This is the
Okay.
House Committee. You just have to.
Okay, all right.
Do you want us to get you a copy of the one that do we have a copy we can give him of the one that we have? Just in case there's specific questions on line numbers or anything, you've got it. We'll bring that out to you, but you can go ahead.
So now, LC 39470S, does that sound right?
08S.
08S.
Yes.
Just like, I know. So I'm just gonna go through the 4 sections real quickly. Section 1 gives the department more leeway on two publishing days for the public hearings due to some local papers being published weekly. Now, Section 2 gives the department the ability to negotiate with condominium associations for common areas. Section 3 codifies GDOT's TRIP program to pay bonuses to get tractor trailers off our interstates faster and get traffic moving. And then Section 4, this gives the department a head start on getting the utilities moved before the widening starts on the projects. And that's pretty much it. I'll stand for questions if
Thank
anybody
you.
has a question.
I think y'all are going to have a lot of questions on Section 3. So
Okay.
before those come, I want you guys walk us through specifically what Section 3 does, what it doesn't do, why you want it. I think that the concern that I've heard already, just as I was walking in the room, was that people could be towed immediately. And there's some concern that people may be sorting out a breakdown or something and may be otherwise able to be off the side of the road, to get their truck off the side of the road. And so that's the chatter. I want to give you opportunity to respond
Okay.
to that.
So this section of the bill, and I'll get Josh to help if I need as well. This is obviously dealing with vehicles 16,000 pounds or more. So this is going to be tractor and trailers, big vehicles that are either turned over and spilled stuff on the roadway. It's not just vehicles, small cars. So obviously, when a tractor and trailers, get stalled on the road, it's a huge issue. It could essentially stop the whole expressway or roadway. But if senators have a question, I'll be glad to field the question.
If I could add something
Sure,
to
yeah,
that.
Josh, why don't you go ahead and,
This program, the TRIP program, actually exists today under our general powers. We've already stood this up. It's been operating. The way it works is that you have, just as Representative said, was a commercial vehicle that has had an accident, flipped over, and what it triggers is the department, there's a tower who's assigned to a corridor who is the TRIP tower. There's an incentive payment paid to them on top of whatever they're gonna collect from the insurance for the removal to get it removed within 90 minutes. So there's a timeline on that. The way that works is, though, you have to rely on coordination between local law enforcement, state patrol in a lot of cases on the interstates, the tower and the department. And because of that coordination and that communication, it requires communication among the parties and clarity. The reason that we're seeking to codify it specifically, so this wouldn't change anything operational today, it already occurs today, but it would add that clarity along in terms of the chain of command among the local law enforcement, the tower, and even local governments that have gotten involved in the program. So it's not creating a new situation, it's trying to ameliorate the interactions of the various parties that are needed to make this work. And since the inception of the program, it's had an incredible impact of getting these crashes off of the interstates so that you are reducing the wait times and you have secondary crashes that occur because of traffic just being stopped. So the TRIP program's been hugely successful. It's federally funded, so some of the restrictions that we have in terms of like it has to be a commercial vehicle are tied to the fact that the federal money that funds this program requires there to be a commercial vehicle.
all right. You said flipped over. I just want to clarify. It's not triggered when it's flipped over. That was just
It's got to be blocking a lane,
Okay.
and so it's something where you're requiring. And the reason you have a program like this is it requires a tower with specialty equipment. So someone who's already been pre-qualified for that area, who's got the resources available, they've got enough trucks, they've got enough people, they're close by, they have the equipment, they can be called on a notice to come out there and feasibly get the crash off of the roadway.
Would you say it's pretty typical that that it's a rollover type scenario where that's usually when you have to employ that
Yeah,
program?
I
Because
mean,
obviously the truck otherwise is
Yes.
just going to drive
If it's
itself
just
to the-
stalled,
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
Great. Chairman Moore, recognized for a question.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I'm under the same understanding too of how TRIP works. And if a commercial vehicle is wrecked on the interstate, sure, we want to get that thing off the interstate as soon as possible. But your language says disabled, it says just a damaged, abandoned, or in general otherwise inoperable. So if it's just wrecked, I think that's understandable. But what happens when an owner-operator's truck breaks down, you know, and he's done his best to get it off the side of the interstate, and, you know, obviously there's incentive money at hand here. What keeps a record company or the Department of Transportation from rushing to the judgment and getting that thing off of the road? I mean,
I'll say probably the feedback we get today is that there are times where and see, this is a call made by local law enforcement folks on the ground in conjunction with the department, but it's law enforcement on the ground, that there's probably situations where they're not making the call to trip something that they argue it should have been tripped. So I think there's often a sense of trying to defer to, does this really need to be tripped or not?
Okay.
Walk me through, so when did the trip come into place as a program?
2007.
Okay.
And Andrew Heath, our
Mr.
deputy
Chairman.
chief.
What's the, let me, 2 seconds. What's the reason that you need this change? What are you not allowed to do under current law that you would like to be able to do that this change allows you to do?
This doesn't change anything operationally, but because it involves local law enforcement and state patrol, and often some local governments have been pulled into this as to how does the program work, who gets to make the call. This is meant to specifically state, okay, you can have a program, and this is the mechanics of it. It's for this purpose.
It puts you in charge of the program, whereas right now, is there some question around?
We are in charge in the sense that we're the ones that make the payment. We're involved in working with our partners in the pre-qualification. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for it to be successful, it's not just a GDOT program. It's coordination with local law enforcement and the towing industry.
Okay, Chairman Moore, back to you.
Mr. Chairman, on this and the TRIP program, and obviously I understand the intent of it. Personally, though, I think that there's other ways to bring in more free market to the towing enterprise of the state, especially when it comes to commercial motor vehicles. Because right now, the Department of Public Safety, who regulates whether a truck can be on the wrecker list or not, have set these standards that there has to be a rotating wrecker. Right, and for years we've moved commercial motor vehicles off of the highway without a rotating wrecker. And a rotating wrecker costs like over $1 million, which obviously was a regulation that was put into place to protect your bigger wrecker companies from any outside competition. So if there was more competition when it comes to commercial motor vehicles, we probably wouldn't have to be paying to incentivize these people to come to the roadway anyway. But what I realize you're trying to do is you're trying to put this into code, because obviously you're probably running into arguments on, you know, who's going to get the money and who's not. But I think the way you've written it in Section 3 is so broad that there are a lot of unintended consequences. I think it ought to be tightened up to just say that wrecks that have occurred, right? Maybe even violations, where law enforcement has written a violation because a wreck has occurred. But the way this reads is just otherwise inoperable. I mean, there's times where an owner-operator could blow out a tire, and they're just going up to the next exit and trying to figure out whether somebody's going to charge them $700 or $800 to replace that tire. So, and then next thing you know, this truck's getting towed. So, I would be okay with the bill as long as Section 3 was removed or otherwise rewritten to just be more specific to wrecks.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, to your point, and I agree with you, would you not agree that time is of essence, and if we did change that, and I'm not sure DOT would be in favor of this, but we would have a time frame. Obviously, I mean, if you can move the vehicle and get it up to the ramp, that's one thing. But if it's sitting, you know, on the far lane and it's broke down, and then they say, well, if DOT can't get so the trip charge, the extra fee is to get them out there in a timely faster manner, right?
Representative, I would say that, like, exactly, that would be a citation for impeding traffic. So if the officer wrote the sign, you're stuck in the road, you're impeding traffic, that's a citation, then maybe this would go into effect. But the way this is written right now, there might not even be a citation. There may just be a truck on the emergency parking, and all of a sudden now this thing is going to get towed, and who's going to pay for it?
Well, if it was in an emergent, if it's not blocking a lane, it wouldn't be tripped.
I don't see that in the language.
That's the way the program works today. But obviously you have, the challenge and why it is broad is that you have all sorts of configurations and weird scenarios that could come into play. Operationally, because the department is paying an incentive, that otherwise if you didn't pay the incentive, it would be money that could be used for other things within the department. The goal is not to trip everything that's out there. The goal of the program is to trip those circumstances where you have a major accident that requires a specialty tower to come in.
And if that's the legislative intent, that needs to be made more clear in the legislation.
So, yeah, I think the reason you see the language here is to account for any potential scenario, so that you don't have someone challenging, well, that wasn't enough in the lane, or that was too much. So I think that's why the council took the step that it did in drafting this. So.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Beach.
Yeah, two questions. One, didn't we pass a law a couple years ago giving Hero trucks the ability to make decisions and call the wreckers out there and clear the road
I don't
and
know.
take video?
I'm not sure if there was a statutory change for that, but under the general powers of the department, if any vehicle that's stopped on right-of-way can be removed. So, I mean, generally speaking, this power already exists, and the TRIP program is just really to help provide all the parties that are involved in this the information about how it would work.
One other question to piggyback on Senator Moore's question about parked and, on exits. We're seeing a lot of that where trucks are just parked on the entrance ramps or the exit ramps. They're not blocking traffic, but it is a safety hazard. You're talking about public safety. Are we towing those trucks, or we're not? Are we citing those trucks for illegally parking?
I'll take that one. So to your point, no, we're not, because and I have a lot of issues up on 85 in my district for that reason. And the reason we're not is we don't have the infrastructure in place. These truck drivers have nowhere to go and park. So unfortunately, when I've talked to DOT, if they go out for somebody that's parked on the side of the road, the only way they can't just ask them to move. They have to go to inspect the whole truck. The troopers will go out, but they don't like to. But the problem is we've tied the truck company's hands. At 8 hours, they're shut down. So really, to your point, if they're parked on the ramps, they have no choice, because we just don't have, unfortunately, we don't have any rest areas, infrastructure in place throughout Georgia. And that is a huge issue, which I've been saying myself in Transportation Committee. So, but I think to Senator Moore's point, I think that we're not trying to tow people that's on the side of the road or on the ramps. It's if a truck turns over and you have chickens running everywhere, you have somebody that comes out there and has the tools and people to get them all up, or if you have a truck broke down in one of the driving lanes, to get somebody out there in a very timely manner to move the truck. We're not trying to circumvent the market or make it so someone else. I understand that my son has a trucking company, and I understand they want to use their towers, but if they can't get out there in a timely manner, if it takes them 2 or 3 hours to get their tower out there, that's or 4 hours or 5 hours, that's hindering traffic, which is like Josh said, it's making other people have wrecks and stopping our expressway. So,
Senator Gann, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at line 106, and you use the term right-of-way, use that in a couple of places in there. And it sounds like to me it'd be real easy if we just change that to travel lanes. Because the right-of-way, I go down the interstate, it might be 300, it might be 500 feet wide, who knows what it is. You got a truck off here on the side of the road that's not interfering with traffic. It could sit there for a week or two. But if you just said change that to travel lanes, to me, I think we're getting what we want done. Hey, you're blocking traffic, we're gonna move your ass. Pardon my French, but quite honestly, that's where, to me, I think you change that, and then if you're off on the shoulder, on the right of way, you know, you get a certain amount of time to change it. But
That's a great suggestion. I would take a friendly amendment to that.
Josh, let me ask you a question. I'm still a little unclear on something. Y'all are running this program now.
Correct.
Y'all are dealing with trucks that are turned over with this program now.
Correct.
What is this allowing you to do that you can't do currently?
Improving the ability to coordinate among local law enforcement and the towers.
So
it
you don't
is-
believe that you statutorily right now have the
We do have
ability?
statutorily, but by spelling it out, it makes it clearer to all the parties that are involved.
Is there can you give me an example maybe of something that's happened that's caused you guys to say, hey, this is something that we need to address?
Concerns about who has the authority, who gets to make the call about when something's tripped or not.
Okay. Is that you, Senator Mello?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thought about a municipality recently that I had that annexed across my favorite road, I-16, to try to give themselves enforcement power on I-16. Share the same concerns as the gentleman from Northwest Georgia, that if it was travel lanes, I would support that. But I'm concerned about trucks that break down, because we have a lot of them on I-16 that would be off to the right of the road, which would still be considered the right of way. And I want to give those owner-operators a chance, if they went to get a part or something like that, not to, for somebody just to be able to just go and tow them. And if we're going to do it, let's fix it, do it right.
Josh, right now, if somebody is stalling the right of way, are you guys tripping them and towing them? Okay. Senator McLaurin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is a kind of in the gray area between a comment and a question. But
You like to live in the gray area, Senator. So.
I guess so. Sorry to ruin your bet earlier. It seems like one of the issues is, and I'm just kind of playing this out in my head, if you've got an interaction, like an interagency interaction, it helps, is kind of what you're saying, to be able to hold up the code and say, it's right there. Because I mean, my sense is that part of this bill is about immediacy and expediency. And so if there's any confusion or disagreement about the hierarchy of authority on the scene, even if it eventually gets resolved, then, you know, but the problem is you're taking time to figure out and coordinate that otherwise. I mean, is that basically the issue?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. If I could, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
the comment about why it says right-of-way, that was very intentional, because you might have a circumstance where you have impacts that are not in a travel lane. And so it all goes to the event. So whatever happens, so you could theoretically have a stall. Let's say you have a stall, let's say the truck's on fire or something's happened and you have impact where it's resulting in closed lanes. Now someone will say, well, it wasn't technically in the travel lane. But if it's just stalled, there's no incentive. It's not impacting travel lanes, but it might not be in a travel lane and it could have an impact on travel lane. That's why it was written very specifically to include right-of-way, so that it covers, and you could also have something that's in the median. At the end of the day, you all drive the roads. You see the circumstances where something that doesn't make logical sense as to why it's causing traffic to back up is causing traffic to back up. And so where you have a situation where it's impacting the travel lanes and it's involving a commercial truck, I think the expectation would be that that gets resolved as quickly as possible. But if it's just a run-of-the-mill, if it's not impacting traffic, there's no incentive to provide an incentive.
Yeah, I just basically want to go on record saying I can understand the hesitation about putting something in code that doesn't need to be, but if there's like a clarity and immediacy issue relating to the public value that's at stake, then it makes sense to me to make it as clear as possible so that you don't have those disagreements or confusion on the ground, so it's
Correct.
faster.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, obviously you reiterated your intent, which is impeding traffic. So why not just strike out disabled, damaged, abandoned, wrecked, otherwise inoperable, and replace it with impeding traffic? That way it gives the owner operator on the side of the road the ability to say, hey, I'm not impeding traffic. 108, 109. Senator from the 14th, I think, wants to speak, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll bring a lawyer in.
Well, my lodestar, my North Star is clarity in the moment, right? So if whatever word you put in there, you're going to want it to be as indisputable as possible. You know, the vaguer the concept, like what does impeding traffic mean? And if there's like a dispute on the ground about what that means in the moment, then it frustrates the ability to act quickly. And so I guess my question would be, do you think that it would be more clear to say impeding traffic or to have sort of this enumeration of vehicles in different conditions?
I want to, Josh, currently, if you guys wanted to be out around the state hauling people out of the right of way and you wanted to trip them, you could do that.
Correct.
And
So the law is if you're inoperable, if the outside of this code section, the general power is if someone is stopped on the public right of way, they can be removed. And there's a reason for that. Obviously, they are impeding the public.
My point is, you guys have that authority now. You're not abusing it so far as at
Correct.
least we've heard.
Correct. We
I-
are just trying to improve the coordination that really is, we're trying to improve coordination among the third parties that are involved, because it requires third parties to be involved to make it successful, so that everyone in this room can benefit from not being stopped longer than they have to be on interstate, or be involved in a secondary crash, or a fatality, or or injury because of that.
How'd this bill go in House Transportation? Representative. Chairman Avatarte. Oh, yeah, I guess you're on one. Does it not work?
No,
put you on
sharing the mic here with
Okay.
each. Sorry I'm late to the party. You picked me? Okay. Well, I think to make this, well, I appreciate that, Senator. I think just, to me, to make this easy, I don't know why we just don't strike 16,000 pounds and call it a day, but, because I know my constituents in West or the Northwest, as Senator Moore would say, our locals, I think, have concerns about putting a number on it.
What would that accomplish if we struck 16,000 pounds?
I think it would open the door that if somebody locally in that community can respond to an incident quicker, it would happen very quickly.
All that you would change by striking 16,000 pounds is put passenger vehicles in the same net that this is dealing with.
The problem with that as well, if I may, would be a lot of people don't have the ability to clean up a mess, like if you spilled, like I said, chickens or anything like that. But
I would say, in all due respect, in Northwest Georgia, we can handle that.
All right, we're gonna Senator. Is that Senator again?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of time, I'm going to make a motion if I can at the right time to do pass, but I think that in honor of Senator Moore's question on how do we deal with this, somebody being on the side of the road, but their fire is, impeding traffic. I think on line 106, if you just strike the word right of way and you make that travel lane, leaving the, hey, they're impeding the travel lane, and if they are, then you can remove them and leave the right of way on line 107 in there, so that if you're going to pick them up, you don't leave them on the right of way. Get them off the right of way, whatever it is. But for me, I think the easy thing to do is change 106 to travel lane, instead of right of way right there.
I think the wise thing to do, rather than try to do this on the fly, would be to allow a couple of us to connect with the department and council. I understand what you're saying. If there's a truck that slipped over in a median, and traffic on both sides of the road is moving 15 miles an hour because you got rubber decker delays, then that's a problem that does not get solved by his change. One thing that's rolling in my head is do you change it to restoration of traffic flow? And that doesn't restrict you necessarily to a specific event, but I think that what we should do is table this for now. Maybe we'll form an ad hoc subcommittee between the people that are most interested in this, have a meeting, and when we meet next week, we'll revisit this rather than, and we'd like to do this rather than do it on the fly. All right. So we will set this bill aside right now, not entertain a motion. Thank you guys for being here. I would, Senator Ginn, do you want to take the lead on connecting with these guys and pulling on some other members? It'd be great. Thank you, guys. All right. Next up, we have Representative Richardson. Who's hiding in the back there? First and foremost, Representative, I've got an important question for you.
Yes, sir.
Is this your first bill?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure before we
That's why I was on the
before we
back
proceed. Indeed. And you were joined by we got a pressing matter here from Chairman Buck.
Pressing sports update. Georgia Tech 51, Virginia 41, 6:46 to go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chairman. This is Senate Bill 50, I'm sorry, House Bill 58. And Representative Richardson, are you working off of LC 394744S?
LC 394575S.
Okay. Let's figure out what we have that's different here. Oh, this is my sub. So I changed this. And you know about my change. The change is on the fireworks piece.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
perfect.
I've
So
heard
I'm
that. Yes,
confused
sir.
myself. Let's get you a copy of the bill that we have,
Okay.
just so you don't talk about fireworks, because we did remove that. All right. Since this is your first bill, tell us a little about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do in real life?
Yes, sir. I am from Columbia County, District 125. I share district with Senator Burns here. Part of Columbia County, part of McDuffie County. In my regular life, I'm a car wash entrepreneur. We have 11 locations. So that's what we've been doing for the last.
Are your locations kind of drive through the automated deal and then vacuum it out and grab a couple tiles and do that
Yes, sir.
thing?
Express miles.
So
Yes,
those
sir.
are good businesses.
Yes, sir.
Got
They
another.
have been good to us.
I'm gonna recognize Chairman Burns.
Is it not true, Representative, that you have other entrepreneurial opportunities?
Yes, sir. We do other things. We've got some storage, commercial storage, and we do sell some fireworks a little bit. We're in the fireworks business also. So
I didn't know that. Were you mad at me then when I took fireworks out of this
sir,
bill?
No, sir. I was not. I don't do.
I was waiting for the confession, Mr. Chairman.
I don't do the big shows. I sell and let you do the show that you would like to do, Mr.
Fantastic,
Chairman. So
fantastic.
that's-
Well, thanks for that. Go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. I come to you to present HB 58. This bill is in response to concerns regarding operation of unmanned aircraft over certain gatherings of people. While FAA regulation addresses operating drones over crowds, there are challenges for local authorities in providing enforcement to those regulations due to the lack of clear guidelines that can lead to privacy and nuisance issues during events. This bill has been developed in partnership with others to provide a solution that is limited to a specific concern. This bill has also been designed so as to not create preemptive issues with FAA oversight of aviation issues. The bill defines a ticketed entertainment event for the purpose of creating a zone within which it will be a misdemeanor to operate a drone unless it meets one of the listed exceptions. The bill provides a 400-foot buffer from the event location and is in keeping with existing FAA practice for some similar exclusions. There are exceptions allowed for persons whom have obtained consent, those who are operating under FAA authorization and within FAA regulation, employees of the event, and utilities conducting official business.
Great. So in layman's terms, as I understand your bill, you're saying that for essentially ticketed events within 400 feet of a property of a ticketed event, you cannot fly a drone.
Yes, sir.
And the reason for that is you have had instances where outside of football games, golf events, et cetera, you have people flying drones, taking footage of those events, and then I don't know if they were commercializing those or what they were doing, but that's the why, the what behind the why. Is that correct?
That is exactly right. We do have an event that you mentioned in our county, the ladies golf event, and last year there was a gentleman flying a drone over, disrupting the tournament while it was going on, and he was actually in South Carolina as he was flying this drone over the ladies amateur.
Interesting. And who do you have with you today?
This is Scott McGregor, and he represents Columbia County.
Great. Scott, do you want to add anything?
No, but I'm here to answer questions.
Fantastic. It looks like you have some coming. Chairman Burns.
Just clarification, this is a privacy bill, is that not true? We're
Yes,
trying to
sir.
protect the privacy of individuals participating in these events.
Yes, sir.
From unauthorized use of footage. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. And a nuisance where if
It's a
you,
nuisance.
if you're a concert also and
Yeah.
somebody's flying over and you're trying to enjoy the concert and they're zooming or disrupting
So
or
we're
whatever.
talking about a nuisance issue and a privacy issue.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Consider again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 14, you reference permitted pursuant to Chapter 10 of Title 25. I'm not familiar with that title and chapter. And one of the things that earlier today in this very room, we talked about from Speaker Jones has a bill dealing with equestrian events and fireworks. And if you know anything about horses, it was as some of them are crazy as all get out. So I could see, okay, you might be having a horse show. Somebody's flying a drone over, the horse goes berserk because they're hearing a drone or something along those lines. What would happen if, in the language of your bill, if we just struck permitted pursuant to Chapter 10 of Title 25, just remove that portion and just leave everything else just like it is? Would there be any problem with that, doing that?
I'm not sure. We work with many people on this that ask us to look at some
We
certain.
might direct that towards legislative council.
I'd be glad to.
Yeah, we can take that out. That's my bad. I should have, it was part of the fireworks.
Okay.
And so if we strike that, you're good for that.
Yes, sir.
And
So just to let y'all know, the version of this bill as it passed the House included public fireworks shows in the inclusion of those events that you would not be able to fly a drone close to. I worked with these gentlemen and had that removed because in my opinion, things that you can see from the ground are very different from things that you have to fly a drone to see. The golf tournament's very different from a fireworks show, and I didn't want to criminalize an individual who wanted to fly a fly a drone above their property just because there happened to be a fireworks show that was within 120 yards. Senator McLaurin.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to raise a point. I mean, you remember when we used to be on a list nationally of what were called fireworks hellholes. And we did some important fireworks reform at one point to remove ourselves from that list. So I'm glad the chairman's been working on this to make sure that we don't go back to a fireworks hellhole state.
Senator, would you say that when you are on a hellhole list, it'd be important to take legislative action?
I think that
to
depends on
remove
the
yourself?
type of hellhole, Mr. Chairman. But no, it's just important work. I wanted to commend you for it. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Chairman Beach.
Yes, I don't see anywhere where, is law enforcement carved out in this? If law enforcement wants to have a drone flying over the
Number
tournament?
2
Yeah,
would
number
handle them.
B.
Who would?
Or, I'm sorry, B.
Line
B and
47
the
is kind of their catch-all for a number of exclusions, including.
So lawful manner, that's what that is? Okay.
There's a variety of entities that are required to have a FAA license to operate. Really, in order to fly a drone outside of purely recreational purposes, just like you have one in it's a toy, basically, you have to have an FAA certification and be following the rules that you'd be educated on for that purpose.
Okay. Also, Mr. Chairman, if a motion is made, I have an amendment that I'd like to present.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Navartarte.
It's probably not important now, but I'm talking about things made in China, fireworks. Are these China drones or American drones?
Probably China today, but from some language that's going around, I think both chambers, that may change in a few years
So if I heard you right, you do support American drones?
I do support American drones.
Okay, just want to get you on the record.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Moore.
Thank you. So line 45 covers if you're the host of an event, right? So if you're hosting the golf tournament and you want to fly a drone over the golf tournament, you have the right to do that.
Line 49 and 50 would actually do that directly.
Yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Chairman Ginn? All right, take a motion from Senator Ginn.
I move do pass on LC 394744S.
All right, we have a motion and a second of due pass by substitute. I'm going to recognize Chairman Beach.
Yeah, I have an amendment. I think it's been passed out in your packet. At the end of line 50 and replacing lines 51 and 52 with the following: is a first and former broadcaster, as such term is defined in code section 38-3-57.
And then that would be D, and then E would be the following. We would change the D in the current to E.
Yep. So we
Okay.
did not have that in our packets. I hear everybody looking for it.
Okay.
So, Chairman Beach, just read us what the new D will become, because you're just gonna make the existing D E.
Yes.
So you have you're creating a new carve-out,
For first and former broadcasters.
and that's defined by a code section, and
And-
help us understand the intent.
Well, I don't represent, I've got a constituent of mine. We have somebody here represent, Jeremy, come on up. I want Jeremy Collins, who represents the Broadcast Association, but one of my constituents is president of that association this year.
All right, before we do that,
And asked me to look into this because they feel that they're being slighted in this bill.
we've got a motion to amend. I need a second for discussion.
Second.
Okay,
Okay.
got a second from Senator Mallow. Why don't we have Jeremy come forward?
Come
I
on,
know
Jeremy. Can Jeremy come forward?
He can.
Come on.
And then we'll let the author, or the sponsor of the bill speak to this, because I don't believe that they believe this is a friendly amendment, so I want to allow them to respond as well.
I consider it a friendly amendment, Mr. Chairman. Jeremy Collins, I'm here representing the Georgia Association of Broadcasters, which is all of the local radio and TV stations in the state of Georgia. We are in support of Chairman Beach's amendment to clarify that the broadcasters are exempt from this legislation. This is not our legislation, but if you guys do decide to pass this out, we would like to be included with the language of Chairman Beach's or Senator Beach's his amendment. We think it clarifies any confusion. My understanding is this bill is before you because of an incident that happened last year that was referenced previously. That community, we think, is well equipped to handle the education to event staff, to volunteers, to members of law enforcement. But that is a specific community that is used to hosting large events, but that is not the case around the state of Georgia. So we think this bill has that carve out, I believe it's B, I have it in front of me. We think it is prudent to highlight the broadcasters to stop any confusion when they are trying to report a newsworthy event or a public safety event that is newsworthy.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes.
How does subsection A, which says has obtained consent by any person with legal authority over a ticketed entertainment event, how does that not cover the broadcasters, in your opinion?
Well, you could say that several of this they fall in line with. I mean, they are.
Say that again. I didn't catch that.
I'm sorry. You could say that several of these, of A, B, C, D, E, several of them they would fall in line for. They are federally regulated through the FCC. We want to highlight it because think about it. If most of the time people's reaction to the media is no. Can we come in here? It's no. Well, they have a right. They have a First Amendment right. And in talking to some of the members of this committee,
Hang on a second. Hang on. They don't have a First Amendment right to enter a private event.
That's where I was going, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So in Georgia law right now, it is trespassing to fly over anybody's private property. That protection's in there currently. And also, it is illegal in Georgia for any persons to record private property that is out of the public view without consent. So that was where I was going, Mr. Chairman, on some of the questions I got before this meeting, is those safeguards about privacy are already in Georgia's law. So it would not impede on some of the concerns from members that I spoke to before this committee. It just clarifies and then I also heard, about flying over. Well, there are temporary no-fly zones, and you don't have that issue with like the Braves or the Hawks or Augusta National. I mean, they have a no-fly zone, but there's other incidents around the state where they apply for a temporary no-fly zone, and they get it, and drones wouldn't be able to be flown over there. So they comply with multiple, I guess I'll call them carve-outs, but we want to clarify if we're going to put in here B, if you're flying a drone, why do we have to have that in there? That's already a federal regulation. So if we're going to state certain things in this law, if it becomes law,
So
why
give me
can we
the-
not just carve out the media, which
Give me
has
the
a right?
scenario of where you guys will be flying drones off property, because that's what this bill is doing a carve out for, is 400 feet off of a property. What's the scenario that y'all will be doing that where you wouldn't already be captured in any of these? I'm not.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm not. I think we are captured. But if we're going to put it in here, we want to be clarified, because when you're talking about the media and the access to report newsworthy events and public safety issues that are newsworthy, we don't want the delay in having to try to explain. No, wait, we can because of X, Y, and Z. You're going to anybody flying a drone is going to. I mean, they're going to have to get consent. Like on A, like I just said, it's trespassing, already in Georgia code. It's illegal to record private property if it's out of the view, and you don't have the consent of private property. So that would be a drone flying over. You already can't do that. So the protections are already in place. You know, I believe, and I can't speak to it again. If you guys don't pass this bill, that's fine with me. I just, my request is to have Senator Beach's language put in. But if we're going to highlight this, and I know they want clarity, I think it doesn't have clarity for the broadcasters. I think that you put that in there, it is easier. And if you look at the language.
All right, I'm going to recognize a couple of senators for questions. Senator McLaurin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This actually kind of strikes me as a similar discussion as what we were talking about with the right-of-ways, which is this is a situation where you have like a game time decision that has to be made on scene. The whole idea is that there's a coordination or conflict problem where people are trying to communicate about who's allowed to do what. And so if I'm understanding correctly, normally I wouldn't think you would come into committee and say, oh, well, we're already covered by it. But I think your point is you're going to be allowed to use it anyway. So the real issue is just clarity with the people who are denying access about the fact that you're allowed to use it because you maybe have to take consent or you comply with federal regulations already. So if it's a clarity issue, kind of going back, not to say the exact same thing twice, but it does seem like having clarity in the code would allow the resolution of that conflict on the scene, which is kind of the whole point. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, thank you.
A little bit more articulate than myself.
Okay, so say I'm hosting a golf tournament and I've sold the broadcasting rights to NBC, okay? And then a public safety event happens at my golf tournament and all these other broadcasters want to come and bring their drones in. I haven't given them any consent because I've given the contract to the one media group under A. You're telling me they're not allowed then?
I'd have to get back with you with that specific.
Because like a ticket event, say NASCAR, right?
Well, I know, I can't really speak with that much of authority, but I know that there's certain, high school football came up. That's a thorny area in the South. In Georgia, we love our high school football. Well, I know that some incidents there, you have the visiting team wanting to stream, broadcast their stuff, and the local, team, the home team have said no, and that is, so there's issues there, but then you get down in the law, which I'm not their lawyer. They have an outside counsel that's not here, but that can get thorny, so people can say no if you have that broadcasting right. Now, I believe that has been in the courts, but I can't speak on that. I can get back to you, if this, before it if it gets out of this committee and the amendment comes on, I could certainly, make a commitment to get back to you before you're on the floor and answer that. And if I can't answer it, I'll put you on the phone with somebody who can. I just don't want to answer something incorrectly to you, Senator.
So if this is an issue of privacy and it's a private event and I've given some group consent to invade my privacy, shouldn't others not be allowed to come in?
No, sir. I think I'm probably aligned with you on privacy. That's why I wanted to highlight the things I mentioned before, that there's already privacy laws in Georgia that make them, you think drones, I don't want them to come into my property. Me too, trust me. That's why I wanted to highlight some of those concerns that's already in Georgia code. Like, that's trespassing. That is.
All right, we're going to keep this moving. Otherwise, I'm just going to have them pull your amendment because we got other people that have been waiting. Well, let's go quickly, guys. Chairman Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification and go back to the chairman's comment. In A, on line 45 and 46, how would that statement not cover your concern?
The broadcasters are not laid out. If we're laying out generalities in here, you have to explain it. And we would ask for an easier way of explaining the ability for them to report newsworthy events and public safety issues that are newsworthy. So we would like to make it, not every community is hosting Augusta National. Not every community is going to be that sophisticated to be able to explain that the media is allowed.
Yeah, one follow-up,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. Your proposed amendment in E, an employee of water, sewer, electrical, telephone, cable, or other regulated utility.
That's what's currently D.
That's D. All right, so that's currently, we're moving that one down to E. So you're only inserting the first and former broadcaster, is that correct?
Yes, Senator, and that word is in there, or those two words, because that is how broadcasters are defined in Georgia code from a law that Senator Beach passed in 2014. That's why that is in there, because it's easier to attach to.
Senator Lucas.
Question. If I, say, rent a football stadium, pay for it for an event, and somebody flies a drone over it.
That's a private event, sir. So
So if it's a private event, so what you do, shoot it down or?
One of your fellow committee members told me earlier today when speaking to them that that's a felony. So I would suggest that, like myself, like a lot of folks, you think, you know, if it comes in my property, I'll shoot it down. I mean, that's a common thought process. But that's a private event, and like to the things I mentioned earlier.
Which means you had to get permission in order to do it.
Yeah, it's trespassing. So those safeguards are already in there, and that's why a lot of this, I believe, you know, it's.
Jeremy, you're overselling. Go ahead, Mallow. Senator Mallow. All right. Last question on this amendment. Senator Chairman Adam Vertarte.
I mean, just break it down real simple. I mean, I get ticketed event, it's a private event, whatever, but I think if something happens at an event, around the property of that event, that's a matter of security or public concern or whatever. I mean, the way this reads to me in layman's terms is, are we gonna, force somebody, a broadcaster, to have to go get legal consent while an event's playing out? And I think common sense would say the answer would be no. And I think this is just, all this is doing is clarifying in those situations. Not that broadcasters are gonna impede on NBC or somebody like that, but I think when those things happen, to make it very clear, since, a lot of this is already superseded by federal law, federal rules anyway, so. Some of this is honestly overkill anyway.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. Jeremy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
going to give the bill sponsor an opportunity to respond, and then we're going to call the question on the amendment.
We do feel like that they're already covered, and that to additionally, and what some of the concern is there is anybody that's a FAA approved person, they're already covered. We're concerned about somebody that may not be approved, and they're out there flying over events that they shouldn't be. I mean, like he mentioned, a high school football game. Is that an approved FFA a pilot that's out flying over those events? So we would like for it to for the licensed approved person to know what they could be or should be doing.
You think that?
Yeah, in order to, I'm looking at an FAA memo dated January of this year. If you're flying for any other purpose like videography or news gathering, you need to have a drone pilot certificate and follow the provisions of our small UAS rule. That is B under this bill. All we would be doing under this amendment is authorizing uncertified pilots to operate. This bill's about clarity for local law enforcement, so they know who is, they don't need to go and somebody says, I'm with the media, and they suddenly have a free pass. They don't need to determine whether they're an FAA certified pilot and those kind of things, which would be appropriate.
You're throwing napkins at me, you're raising your hand, I see your light, I'll get to you in just a second. All right, Senator again.
Mr. Richardson, Representative Richardson, you brought the bill to kind of tighten things up, did you not?
Yes, sir.
And to me, the question comes up with the amendment. If somebody says, hey, I want to give permission to this media outlet over here to fly, they can do that.
Yes, sir.
If they don't want the media, if I use Senator Lucas's example, he's rented the ball field, it's a public field, he rented it, and he said, hey, I just want to, we're doing this. that's up to the people that are there to make that decision. So why would you want to support the amendment that's being proposed for the first and former broadcasters?
I would like it to stay like we have it with the amendment that the chairman made on the fireworks, and other than that, I would like it to stay without any additional amendments, if we can.
All right, we have a motion to amend.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Guys, we're going to call the question. We have a motion to amend by Senator Beach. We have a second by, I believe, Senator Mallow. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. We have 4 in favor. All those like sign. All those opposed like sign. We have 5 opposed. Motion to amend fails. We're now to the underlying motion. I'm going to recognize Senator again.
I would like to offer the amendment to strike on line 14, permitted pursuant to Chapter 10, Title 25.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
So we have a motion to amend to strike. Say that one more time so we make sure.
To strike on line 14, permitted pursuant to Chapter 10 of Title 25.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Let's counsel. Are we good with that? Okay. So that cleans up the fireworks language to clarify what you're doing there. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. 2. So motion carries. We now are to a motion to pass House Bill 58 by substitute as amended. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Seven in favor. All those opposed, like sign. 3 opposed. Motion carries. That's an interesting mix of folks right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Representative, and I promise you probably thought that was hazing. That's just life in the Senate. So,
No, sir, I did not.
There you go.
I appreciate it.
thank you. Who's carrying your bill on the floor? Senator Brass. All right. Next up, we have House Bill 156. We have the capable Brad Thomas pitch hitting for Todd Jones. Understands Chairman Jones is under the weather today, and he said he was sending his best man for the job. So
he sent me, I don't know if his best man for the job. Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure to see you and most of the committee. I am here today to present House Bill 156, and I just want to make sure that I have the LC number correct because I am pitch hitting here. LC 394638S. That should be the
first one we've had right all day. Good job.
Excellent. So this bill basically revises code section 611 to include vertiports within the definition of landing fields and defines vertiports. It also outlines the Department of Transportation's powers and duties regarding aviation landing fields and aviation facilities planning, promotion, and maintenance of these facilities. That's the very, very quick version of what it does. I will do my best to take questions.
So as I understand it, we recognize that autonomous, not even autonomous, but air travel via vertical takeoff aircraft, drones, for human transportation is very quickly becoming a reality. Archer and other companies are moving in that direction. Going through FAA testing, they believe that within the next few years, they'll be able to fly people from a vertiport to the airport in an Uber-style travel. And what you are doing here, I believe, is ensuring that we have statewide consistency around the regulation of vertiports by putting it under DOT, as opposed to having local municipalities do one-off authorizations and rules as it relates to vertiports.
I would say maybe Chairman Jones might have had you present this better than myself.
Well, I certainly said it slower than he would, which is a shock. But I'm going to recognize, we'll go with Senator McLaurin first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Representative.
Good to see you, too.
Now, I'm just, being a minority, I try to track with how the majority does business, right? I'm trying to be a fish in water, swim with the way things are done. So the current president in his last administration, rather than putting space travel under the Air Force, created an entirely new department, Space Force. That's exactly right. Now, I'm curious, have we assessed the wisdom of a similar idea for vertiports depending on how high they go? I mean, is DOT correct, or should we be making like a Department of Atmosphere or something like that?
Senator, I'm shocked that you're bringing a suggestion to grow government with the new agency, but that's on brand.
Just copying what the president did in his last term, you know, an entirely new agency. Have we given any thought to whether DOTs?
If I may, Mr. Senator,
Yeah, sure.
I believe there's one called the Air Force, and since this is an air taxi, maybe it'd fall under that purview of Department of Defense agencies.
Just kind of gauging the appetite for more bureaucracy in case. Okay. Sounds like no. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize Chairman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How does this relate to private property? I see the word private on line 27. Does this in any way regulate private vertiports?
Let's see here, line 27. The way I read this is to cooperate, council advise municipalities, blah, 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 establish whether federal, state, local, or public or private. So that's the way that it reads. So
Okay, so if you or I want to land the Archer plane on our own private
now, this
property,
is
we're going to have
existing
to call
code. You do know that, right?
What's that?
This is existing. We're not adding that.
I know, but what you're adding to relates to that. So
Well,
my question for you is, if you or I want to land the Archer airplane on our private property, are we going to have to call Commissioner McMurray and make sure we got
well, to be
everything
fair,
sorted out?
you can't even fly a drone without some type of license, and that's something that's significantly smaller than one of these pieces of equipment. So,
Okay, so say I got my license and I want to go land on my private property. Am I going to have to get permission from the government to do that?
I think what this is doing is talking about vertiports, not your licensing to fly said planes.
But
And these are actually autonomous planes. They're not, or vertical takeoff vehicles are not.
Okay, so I got my license and I
by
got
you.
my autonomous aircraft and I want to land on my own private property. It's not a vertiport, or is it?
The way that I read this bill right here, vertiport means it's an area specifically designed and primarily used for the landing, takeoff, and service of aircraft with maximum takeoff weight of greater than 1,320 pounds. It's capable of vertical landing or takeoff. So that would be how this is jurisdiction.
So how's that going to affect current helicopters?
Again, that's a helicopter weighs is not what this particular piece of legislation is referring to.
Doesn't a helicopter weigh more than 1,320 pounds?
But a helicopter would fall under, let's see here. I'm going to pull it up. But a helicopter would fall under an aviation facility. This is a landing field, and it defines landing field as a vertiport, and then it defines what a vertiport is. So it's taken care of through that mechanism. A helicopter would fly out of an airport. So, and I think this is probably just lack of understanding of what a vertiport is. They're typically look like a lily pad, just a little round pad. These facilities have 4 or 5 of them, and these planes are vertical takeoff vehicles. They land on that spot. You climb into them, and they pick you up, and they take you to the airport. That's the beginning rollout. This is already happening across the United States.
Then why is this legislation necessary?
So that way there's some guardrails around doing it here in the state of Georgia.
And what are those guardrails as it relates to private property? That's what I'm concerned about, Representative.
Well, I'm not the author of this bill. I can tell you that if you have conversations, I'm sure he'll be able to explain that to you, but I'm here to take care of a friend today. So
I recognize Senator Still.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Thomas, thank you. In using your analogy of lily pads to leap to conclusions, I'd like to leap to making a motion to pass.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions here, so I'll get to that. I'll come back to that after we hear from a couple members that pressed their button. Chairman Beach.
No, I was just going to.
Got it. Senator Ken, is that you? Okay.
I know we're talking about helicopters, but up my way we got some hot air balloon enthusiasts, and I have no idea what those things weigh. But I do know they take off, and then landing them. You know, when they take off, they know where they're coming off from. But when they land, they don't really have a clear path or guide on where they're going to hit the ground.
I'm not sure of the weight on one of those, but my understanding is I think they weigh less than 1,300 because this is a basket.
I don't know. They got torches and butane bottles and people, and that's where for me I think you could easily get 1,320 pounds. But my question is if you pass this and somebody's landing a hot air balloon, you know, typically they come down in somebody's field. What kind of problem would this create for that community?
It would not create a
I
problem.
was going to say, it wouldn't, my understanding is the
Okay,
way I
I
read
would-
this.
that's
it
all I
wouldn't
wanna
create a
make
problem
sure.
at all.
Specifically designated and primarily used for the landing, takeoff, and servicing of aircraft.
Yeah.
Is the language I think that would need to trigger there for this to be in effect. Senator Lucas.
Question. Say you have one of these places to do it, and you got private property next door that might have fences or signs up. And if they miss the place to land and end up on the private property, who pays for it?
Just to make sure I understand the question correctly, you're saying that if one of
you
these
got-
autonomous
If you
units
got
pick-
one of these places,
Mhm.
all right,
vertiport, yeah.
and it's next to private property that has a fence, a big field, a sign, and it missed where it's gonna land and end up tearing down the fence on the private property side, who pays for it?
I believe that the owner of the unit would have to pay to have that piece of machinery removed from the property. So,
In other words, what you're telling me, don't a lot of these planes, do they even have insurance?
I think that these planes are seven
When they fly,
figures,
do
and
they
they're
have
gonna,
insurance when they land and tear up somebody else's stuff?
I most certainly believe these aircraft, which are, I think, starting prices north of $1 million, I would think that they would be insured and would have liability requirements as well.
I just want to say this. Archer is a Georgia company. They're building these here in Georgia. We should be setting up the policy and the basic regulatory framework to make sure that these people can operate within our state. And, you know, I've always been a big proponent of small business and opportunity that brings. This is a great business. This brings great jobs to Georgia, and this is something that's happening across the United States. So,
I think you have one last question here from Chairman Moore. Give you one question.
yeah, I'd be happy to take questions to the best of my ability.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you was turning your button off. Okay, perfect. Any other questions from the committee? What's the will? I'll recognize you for that motion now.
Thank you, Chairman. Make a motion to pass House Bill 156, committee substitute.
All right, we have a motion of due pass by substitute. We have a second by Senator, we have a motion for Senator Still, second by Senator Chairman Beach. Any discussion? Okay, Chairman Moore.
I really have a lot of concerns with the private piece of this. So at the top of the legislation, it refers to 1611, which basically gives the Department of Transportation the ability to regulate construction or basically counsel and advise how an LZ should be set up. And I don't really want the Department of Transportation to get in Archer's way or any other private enterprise's way when it comes to creating their LZs. So with that, I'm going to vote no, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Senator McLaurin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And this is with no disrespect whatsoever to the representative presenting this bill, but I think we were really denied an opportunity to see Chairman Jones nerd out today. And I'm hoping that when he gets better, if he's watching this, I hope he gets better. I want the opportunity for him to gesticulate wildly and explain to me what this bill does for a solid 5 minutes in the hallway soon. So thank you, Chairman Jones, for bringing this bill.
Chairman Beach.
This is pretty simple, Senator Moore. These vehicles are being manufactured, they're coming, and we need to have some rules and regulations over these Veriports. I know the city of Roswell is looking at one right now. And all we're doing is allowing DOT to come up with some regulatory environment to make sure public safety is paramount. And that's all we're doing here. It's a commercial enterprise that we're looking at for these Veriports to take. It's no more than air, Uber, taxi to take you to the airport or take you to a UGA football game or where you want to go. You park your car, you get on one of these things, and it takes you where you want to go. So I just think this is not a hard vote.
Chairman Moore.
Yeah, Senator, I agree with you. I have no problems when it comes to just the commercial or the municipality side of it. If the city of Roswell or any other city wants to consult with the Department of Transportation, but if you're a private aircraft owner, I don't think the government should have any say-so.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the question here. All those in favor, we have a motion due pass with a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 8 in favor. All those opposed, like sign. We have 1. Motion carries 8-1. Do you know who is going to carry this in the Senate? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you'll have to ask the. Okay. Do you mind texting him and just text me? Thank you. All right. All right. Let him know Chairman Beach has volunteered as tribute. All right. We've had the opening bouts are now complete, and now for our main event. House Bill 164. Meeks, you were hiding back there. I didn't see you. Wow. Well done. Before you start, I believe we have some important business.
Absolutely. We have a acknowledgement of a victory by Georgia Tech over Virginia, 66-60. That means now they get to go get clobbered by Duke.
Congratulations. All right, so Chairman Meeks, I believe we have 10 minutes for the room, and we will kind of see what the flow is with the committee. If it's anything like the last 4 bills, we may need to have you come back. But want to certainly give you an opportunity to start. This is a dialogue, obviously, that we had 2 years ago. I think that Leader Gooch and I still have a little scar tissue from the conference committee process on Sine Die. Indeed. But tell us what you're working with here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I think we've all got a few scars from 2 years ago. So House Bill 164, LC 394500, is follow-up to House Bill 189, as you mentioned, from 2 years ago. Crux of the bill is on line 28, where it removes the sunset provision for the legislation, which raises truck weights or provides a 10% variance to 88,000. The remainder of the lines that you see underlined is simply cleaning up the language that we did in the conference committee from last year. In your package, you should have a letter of support from a large coalition of supporters of this legislation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to try to answer any questions.
Yes, I've got 2 questions for you.
Yes, sir.
First one, you say that we moved the truck weights, but it's really not it's not universal. So walk us through who does have an increase of weight, who does not, where they do, and where they do not.
Agriculture and forestry, Mr. Chairman, are the two that industries that it does affect. It does maintain the non-attainment area around Atlanta and Fulton County that was designated as of May 3rd, 2023. So it's just agriculture and forestry that is permitted.
Okay. And walk us through, by the way, we're working off of LC 394500, yes? LC 394500.
Yes, that's correct.
Walk us through what you're doing on lines 97 through 104, please. I believe that's your local law enforcement piece.
In the conference committee, this is cleanup language from the original House Bill 189. It authorizes the local law enforcement to go through a training program and then is authorized to stop the commercial vehicles for overweight violations.
So right now, who can stop trucks for overweight violations?
Motor Carrier Compliance Division, and if they are trained by motor carrier local law enforcement.
Okay. And this changes it to what?
It doesn't change. It reiterates what was in House Bill 1. We just cleaned up the language per Ledge Council's advice. Nothing changes.
Thank you. I got a question here as well. Walk us through lines 119 through 121.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe, and with the advice of Ledge Council, I do believe that was language from House Bill 189 originally as well.
As it relates to flow of funds?
That's correct, yes, sir.
For fines.
Right.
So if you have local law enforcement issuing a fine, that still flows to DOR?
Yes, sir.
All right, we got a question from Senator Lucas.
This moves the truck weights that run on the highway. Does it up it?
For state and local to 88,000, so we're providing a 10% variance of the current 80,000 truck weight on state and local highways, not on interstates.
All right, is that just agriculture?
Yes, agriculture and forestry, yes, sir.
What about dump trucks?
Well, we had a lot of conversation about that, Senator, during the 2 years ago when that was talked about, but it was not added.
The dump trucks fix the roads that you run on.
Right.
I mean, so if they got to fix them, they can't put the stuff in and the same way that the other truck to take it to the place where they need to fix the road?
Aggregates was discussed, I believe, the Department
But
of
they don't fix no
Transportation-
road.
They do fix a lot of roads, yes, sir.
Here we
So,
go
Lucas, I know
again.
there are some members of the industry, road construction industry, that would love to be included. They've asked the question as to why this carve out is exclusive to ag and forestry. I think part of the conversation there as well is that what we did with the non-attainment zones 2 years ago, where we also excluded the non-attainment zones, really trying to make sure that this went to rural Georgia. Part of the thinking for that at the time was that there's a number of bridges that had to be reposted. Josh, I was at hundreds or thousands, I don't recall. 700 bridges had to be reposted. This reduced that. We've been able to have some additional funding over the last couple of years to help shore up some of those. I think there's an outstanding question that we don't know the answer to as to what funding will be needed in terms of maintenance in addition to the bridges. So this is a multifaceted thing. That's a good question. But
Well, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman,
go ahead.
that's a good answer.
Well, thank you.
But it ain't the right answer.
I think that's how you usually describe most of my answers, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Senator Lucas. Again, Senator again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Meeks, how many fingers am I holding up on this hand?
5.
And you know that because you can count.
That's correct.
Said so for me, one of the questions I have is when I've got a citation in my office down there for a guy hauling in logs to a plant in Macon. It was 130,400 pounds. Now, I'm not really good at counting logs or looking at the weight limit on trucks, but let's just say that a local law enforcement saw that truck coming through their community, and they said, "Darn it, we hadn't been checked out. We don't have the all training and the scales and things there." Is there any way that they can call the motor vehicle DPS to come out and say, "Hey, we got a truck we pulled over we think is grotesquely overweight," and have that done? Can they detain that person under the legislation here to have that done, or do they just have to say, "Well, we don't have it, and that truck's going to go on into the yard and unload," although they've done all these damages to all these roads? Is there anything that can be done in the way that your bill is written to address the grotesquely overweight? That's my big problem. I don't have any problem with raising the truck weights to 88,000 pounds. That's the least of my concerns. Right. I support the bill, support the things on that, but I am concerned the stupid ones out there that are above 95,000 pounds that are just killing people. That's subject to accidents. It's we don't make trucks any longer. We don't make them any wider. The only thing we go up is in height. Right. And so when you put that much weight on a truck, there's a really high likelihood of a loss of control, rollover. I had it happen close to my house. Said a gentleman was killed in the rollover because the truck was over 95,000 pounds. Said and to me, I'm trying to make sure that what we put on the road is not abused. And so my goal in trying to help you with the legislation is to make sure that there's mechanisms so that law enforcement can address that. And I don't know what the rules are, but I do hope you can explain that to me.
I'm not in law enforcement, as you know, sir, but I will certainly ask the question. My sense is that two-way radio and all the vehicles communicate with both DPS and Georgia State Patrol, and they can make that call to either of those two agencies. And of course, as we know, DPS is moving around our state. They're in the rural areas, and my sense would be that they could make that call to DPS. But I will have that conversation with DPS as well to make sure that is indeed the case.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, is there anybody here from DPS that could address that, or anybody from DOT that could help us address that?
DOT is in the room. Let's get through some of these questions, and we'll come back to that. Chairman Beach.
Yeah, my question is, I believe DOT has hired UGA to do a study on the impact. Do we know when that study is going to be complete? And
Josh, why don't you go ahead and come to the...
It's going to be 2 or 3 years to do this
desk.
study?
I understand from talking to the commissioner, it was a 3-year study whenever he and I spoke.
So it's going to be collecting rolling data. So
Okay.
you'll have data different series, but we're trying to collect as much data over a period of time to get the trajectory of the impact of the roads and bridges.
Do you want to respond to Chairman Ginn's Or Senator Ginn's
To
question as
repeat,
well.
I may also defer, we got our deputy chief engineer here as well. What was the question?
It was,
The,
go ahead.
when we look at what's going on with a truck that local law enforcement clearly thinks that there's a grotesque violation of the weight limit, is there some way that they can detain that individual until DPS, somebody with truck scales, can come in and take a look at that?
I think we would have to defer to the statute and whether the local law enforcement has that authority or not. I don't know that we could speak to that.
Perhaps legislative council could give me some input on that. I'm not sure if that's allowed in the law or what that would be. It's not an area that not in the law enforcement community.
Currently, well, prior to 189, only motor carrier division could enforce it, so I would assume that, again, an assumption that they could call and have that happen, because how else would it be enforced? Not certain, but this is allowing local law enforcement to, if they're trained, now do it themselves.
If they have scales and had the training and the expertise to do it, but there's no, even though they can clearly see the 5 fingers on my hand and know that truck might be a problem, there's no way that any other law that you know of, as far as unsafe conditions or anything like that, that they could detain that person for, is what I'm kind of concerned about.
All right. Recognize Chairman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, Section 5, the way I read it, a law enforcement officer has the right to pull over a commercial motor vehicle under about any and all circumstances, right?
That's correct.
When it comes to fuel tax registration, I would say most agricultural or forestry vehicles commercially in this state aren't traveling outside of this state, right?
Correct.
Okay, so why do they need...
With the exception of some forestry, depending on where they're located, down where we are, but there are some traveling across down into Florida.
Okay, but I would say the majority of the commerce happens within our state, right? Tree gets cut down in our state, gets processed.
And you've got mills in northern Florida where trees are going.
Okay. So fuel tax registration, a vehicle that's only operating within the state of Georgia doesn't need a fuel tax registration.
That's correct.
Okay. Don't you think adding 119 and 121 is going to send a lot of unnecessary paperwork to the Department of Revenue? Because they're going to be pulling over these trucks and they're going to say, hey, I don't have tax registration.
I'll defer to Ledge Council.
We're striking that same language on 94 to 96 and putting it, now that we're having local law enforcement also being able to do stuff, it's just putting it in a different spot. So it's currently happening.
So it's current law.
And again, all of this stuff after section 2 on has to be cleaned up because everything drops off.
But
Not just the one, if you still want local law enforcement to be involved, all that cleanup needs to be codified because it was in the effective date language at the last minute on Sine Die, and we couldn't codify it properly, so we had to go back through code revision and actually put it in, so it drops off as well. So all this stuff is currently in law, but it will drop off in 2025, as you'll see the description of each code section says as an effect in July 1, 2025.
So starting on line 97, is that new just now to this committee that these local law enforcement officers have to be trained by motor carrier compliance?
No, that's part of the original.
And that's still going to remain the same?
Right, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? What's the will of the committee? A motion to pass from Senator Still. Do I have a second? Second. Second from Senator Mallow. Any discussion? Leader Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. I support the bill as written, but I do believe that it should be all or none. I think all the industries that are represented in the room should have that same privilege. And I hope we can get the storm cleaned up in South Georgia this year and next year, and within 2 years we can come back and address this again with some additional funding for these roads and bridges that the local governments are desperately in need of. So I support the bill.
Thank you, Leader. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Keep it up, please. 5 in favor. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-3. Who's going to carry this for you in the Senate?
Chairman Goodman.
Chairman Russ Goodman.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyone
you,
else
Mr.
have anything for good of the order?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
members of the
Chairman.
committee.
We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.